You're enjoying the voice of Ghana at the time, 21 hours 5. And of course, a very good evening to you, and welcome down to tonight's edition of Police and You. The name is Stan Gouveia, Mike Side. And in the studio, I've got with me the new commander of Regional Division number 9. That's an area most of the times all you know is Rupununi. We can get into some details with that in a bit. But headquartered in Letem is none other than Superintendent Raphael Rose. I got the first name right. And of course, not just that he is the new commander, but newly married too. So we extend congratulations to you, Commander, as we say very good night and welcome to Police and You.
Thank you, Stan. Thank you, listeners.
I caught you there, right? I revealed. Nevertheless, congrats. I'm sure it certainly feels good to celebrate, even in a time of pandemic. But Commander, recently taken over the reins of control in Regional Division 9. And as is usual, for those particularly on the coast, we'd want to ask you to tell us your perspective. What is the physical area that makes up Regional Division 9?
Okay, Stan. Regional Division 9 is made up of Upper Takatu, Escribo. That's the area covering Region 9.
Takatu, but let's just say I'm living in the coast. Me no always do. I guess no there's somewhere on the map of Guyana.
Yeah, well, it's more south
Mhm.
of Guyana, bordering Brazil.
Aye. Better idea now. And of course, you forgot to mention your headquarters at Letem, right?
Yes, our headquarters is at Letem, Central Letem.
All right, we're going to get into some of that right now, but just reminding those of you who are actually joining us right here on the Voice of Ghana's 102.5 FM and on the NCN's sister satellite stations across the country. Feel free to give us a call on 226-4762 should you have questions for the commander pertaining to matters in Regional Division 9, which is under his command. As well as you can send your questions via WhatsApp text on 6320147. That's 6320147. You can also follow this conversation on the Ghana Police Force's Facebook page as well as our YouTube page. Just type in Ghana Police Force and you'll be able to find us on both Facebook and YouTube where this is streaming live. You can also on the Facebook, you can drop your questions there, follow the conversation, and let's discuss what is happening in Regional Division 9. First off, Commander, though you're new to the division, I am sure you had to go in and get your feet wet right away and be able to, I'm sure you're able to tell us now what is the state of affairs in your region as it relates to policing.
Okay, Stan. Yes, of course, I had to go in and have my feet wet because when I took over the region on the 3rd of June, it was flooded. Some areas on the outskirts were flooded. Also, there was a high rates of COVID-19 cases in Letem. So I had to be on the ball there to getting to know what's going on and to deal with some of these situations. As it relates to the COVID, we immediately launched campaign in terms of because in terms of enforcement, we would have a lot of sensitization would have already done. So I would have told the persons in Letem that we are not going to sensitize anymore. We are going to enforce the guidelines. So we did that. In the neighboring villages like St. Ignatius, which is one of the high-rated COVID-19 villages, and a next nearby village, Cappuccino, and we had arrests about 28 persons over a period of 2 weeks for breaching the COVID-19 guidelines.
So, for Regional Division 9, it's no longer information and education, it's enforcement.
Correct, Stan.
And you've got, to date, as you said, in a 2 week period, some 32 arrests.
28.
Sorry, 28 arrests. I was taking it a little higher. Maybe you plan to have some this week. I don't know. But in terms of the impact of such arrests, in terms of the enforcement, how is that working out for you?
In central Letem and the neighboring village, there have been a decrease in those cases where persons been complying with following the guidelines, and also they were complying with the ministry's call to take the vaccine.
And that's the other thing, because
That,
as you do mention, the adhering to the COVID guidelines, there has always been a concern that people go out and take the vaccine. Um, you're finding now that a lot of people are actually adhering to that, so that obviously, if they come out into public, they themselves will be a little bit safer.
yes, Dan. What had happened? The regional chairman would have embarked with the health personnel in the region, and they went to some of those villages and advised them to take the vaccine. And we find more persons are taking the vaccine in the villages.
All right, let's turn to another issue here. And for those of you who are just joining us, this is, of course, Police and You. And we've got the commander of Regional Division 9, who is headquartered in Letem, with us on the program tonight. And of course, you can share your questions about that region with the commander, who will be able to answer once it pertains to his division. Commander, now, evidently, like so many parts of the country, because of the pandemic, and then, as you mentioned, subsequently, more recently, some of the floods, a lot of persons might have been displaced, and also it would have had situations where simple larceny might have occurred or do occur. How is the police in your division dealing with that to be able to either eradicate or reduce it?
Okay, Stan. Indeed, there were an increase in simple larcenies in the region. But what we have done, we have launched our by day and by night patrol um, in order to let the people see the presence of the police by day and by night, and that was working fairly okay for the past 3 weeks. We haven't any reported cases after that. We had one case during that time, but in central Letem, we have seen a decrease in simple larceny. Um, and in the outskirts, like Shelton and so on, there is no reports of any simple larceny. But one thing, we had a report of a cat wrestling, which is prevalent in the Rupuruni region.
But what's one case reported?
One case reported since I'm in the helm of commander.
And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you have been able to apprehend.
Yes, those persons were arrested, and their matters at the DPP for waiting advice.
Okay, all right. So it's not just about what is happening; it's also in terms of what you're doing to arrest it,
Yes.
which shows a level of proactiveness on behalf of the Ghana Police Force in that region. As it relates to other incidents or occurrences, particularly serious crimes.
Okay. Other than the simple larceny, there has been an increase in not really serious crime, but sexual offenses. Um, Comparing the period last year and this year, there was 10 reported cases, and last year there were 6 cases reported. And what we intend to do is to start sensitizing persons in the villages about sexual offenses and what action they should take in terms of when they realize that persons are committing themselves along these lines. Mainly, these offenses are committed in family members. So we begin doing some sensitization. We um, expect to work with the child welfare section and have them on board with us when we are going to the villages and sensitize them. We have already begun that. We have already went to 2 villages, and it was very successful because the feedback is that um, they didn't have much knowledge about it. So we would have commenced that work in terms of eradicating this sexual offenses which is prevalent in the region. So once we have the welfare on board, we will continue to sensitize the villages so we can get a reduction in these cases.
But let me ask you this, Commander. Do you see it as the role of the Ghana Police Force to do sensitization on such a delicate subject and issue as those kind of sexual offenses that are happening? And if it is that you do, what other agencies would you like to see come on board to be able to do more of that and assist you to be able to do the enforcement of the law?
Okay, Stan, first you said if there's a police role to do sensitization, yes, because we are welfare officers at some stage. And if we can avoid these offenses to occur, then yes, we has that role. But in order to have the other agencies, the more the welfare child protection agency should play a more pivotal role in terms of being on board with the police to sensitize these people and to help them to understand the serious nature of this offense. Um, so that could help. That's one agency that I would like to see more active.
Okay. As it relates to some of those, if we to delve a little bit into it further, it's not just the sensitization that the police is doing, but you've also have to do, in some cases, protection of vulnerable persons, as well as enforcement on alleged perpetrators. You believe that in your division you've got the resources to be able to deal with those together, and how has that been working out?
Well, in terms of the child protection and welfare, there is a welfare office there, but I don't think they has the resources to deal with some of these cases. When you speak about protection, um, when you speak about transportation to go to some of the villages, so it's a lot of factors that would come in place when it comes to dealing with these sexual offenses. Um, so we need more, like the Child Protection Agency, more equipped in terms of transportation and area where they can house these victims that is being affected. Because in most cases, the victims has to remain in the same house with the father, other than if the police steps in and
Okay.
brings them out.
Just about 20 minutes now after the hour of 9 o'clock here on Police and You. And we have on the Police and You, it's Commander Raphael Rose from Regional Division 9. Commander, I want to turn my attention now to another issue, and this one deals with migration. And given the uniqueness of the regional division that you cover, in terms of its proximity to our border with Venezuela, and being mindful, sorry, with Brazil, my bad, and being mindful of the fact that it is reported in so many times that we've got large landlocked areas that are considered our borders, and in some cases, people can merely just walk over from one country to the other. Given what is seen in the public domain recently of much persons seeking to either enter Guyana illegally or to leave Guyana illegally, what is the police doing to be able to curb that?
Okay, Stan. Presently, the borders is being closed by the task force, national task force. There is one day that they allow trading to happen from Brazil to the multicultural center. And other than that, the police is being enforcing on the other days. We has a 24-hour security, joint security with the army on the Takatu Bridge, which we would turn persons back who tried to enter into Guyana based on the lockdown rules. Also, there are other areas which is very porous in St. Ignatius area, vast jungle that we know of that people do smuggle persons across the river. And we would do routine patrols and we ask the public to share any information of persons who would be coming over because the police cannot be all the way along those areas. So we would have share our numbers with the community, persons in St. Ignatius, because the river run straight along this St. Ignatius area. And we continue to have our mounted patrol by day and our motor vehicle patrol, mobile patrol, joint patrol by night. And then we have some snap patrols where we go in and look at certain areas based on information gathering. Otherwise, if persons have seen in Letem, for instance, Brazilians, where they would have known to come across the border illegally, we arrest those persons, take them to the immigration to ascertain whether they're in Guyana legal or illegal. And once it confirms that they're illegal, we put them over back to Brazil, hand them over to the authorities on the Takatu Bridge. In terms of Asians or any other persons trying to come to Letem, we have two checkpoints, one at Kupukari, three checkpoints, sorry, one at Kirkwood and one at Anai. These checkpoints would screen all the transportations coming to Letem to see if persons are trying to come through the road, and we would do likewise, turn them back along the way. And Stan, you know that at recent we would have turned back a large flux of Asians, Cubans, Nigerians, who was trying to come to Brazil, come to Letem. Some were illegal, some had entered the country legally. So all in all, the police is on the alert, high alert, for persons who are trying to beat the borders and enter into Letem or trying to leave Letem, coming to Georgetown.
And you did mention earlier, which I'd like for you to elaborate on, that a number of these cases are possibly due to the trafficking in persons. And it is interesting to note that just recently, I believe last week, it was announced that Ghana would have retained its Tier 1 status on the trafficking in persons list. This is globally, which means kudos to the Ghana Police Force and, by extension, your division in terms of working assiduously to eradicate it. But one of the things that has been coming out, and I believe in one of the most recent busts that happened from that area, with the collaboration of work from other regions, it was then learned that you would have had some very Guyanese here who are enabling this kind of practice. Is the police going to be going after those persons who are allegedly taking monies from people to move them from one place to the other and most likely try to get them cross borders?
Yes, Stan, the police has been working getting those persons, and we've been investigating the known persons who do these acts in terms of trafficking persons. And presently, there are several investigations on the way in terms of persons who we would have intercept, trying to take persons to let them, and we intend to continue doing that, investigate to prove that they're trafficking these persons.
And how is the collaboration with your joining regions? As a matter of fact, most of the other regions in
Yes, we've
terms of.
been collaborating with Region 10, Region Region 10 primarily. We've been collaborating. We've been sharing information when persons would have breached Maburo, and we has the information. We would channel it to Region 10. Sometimes, if they has the information, they would channel it to us, and we would step up our enforcement.
Awesome. And so I believe working again to be able to keep communities safe, which is at the pinnacle of what you do in the policing business. We're in, as you would have mentioned, the pandemic era where a lot of restrictions, obviously, is according to the National Task Force and the guidelines that have been implemented. One of the things that people seem to be defiant about is the fact that it has been so long that we're in this lockdown stage. So they want to defy the orders that came out from that, and they want to be able to do their own thing. What advice would you give to citizens, particularly in your region, who are thinking like that? And especially those who are seeing videos on social media where others across the country might be having their own little fets, albeit they're not seeing when they're apprehended and they're charged, but they're just seeing these things posted on social media and decide we can do it too.
Okay, I would advise persons to follow the guidelines by complying with all the rules that lays out in the guidelines. Wear the mask, maintain social distance, follow the curfew, um, and all the other speculated areas they should do. Stan, as you know, Region 9 is vast Armenian settlements, and dealing with some of those settlements, you would have to deal with the Tushaus. So we've been doing talking to those Tushaus, advising them to deal with the persons who in their villages as it relates to complying.
Great. At just about 21 hours 29 here on the police and you, in case you just joined us, a very good evening to you and certainly hope that you're enjoying. We're speaking with the commander of Regional Division 9, Mr. Raphael Rose, who is telling us all about what is happening in terms of policing in his division. And, Commander, we turn our attention now to the issue of traffic. And I know it may sound a little, you know, given the terrain of Regional Division 9, uh, one would, particularly any coastlander, would want to think that you have no issues with traffic in that region. What do you say to that?
I would tell them no, there is traffic in the region, and it's of our concern. Um, what is happening in Letem? There are business owners who are having their vehicles, then they're having persons who are coming from the villages with their vehicles, And they also have motorcycle, which is used normally to ride from a village to the central let them to acquire goods and other things. Um, what we observe is that they are riding the Brazilian number plate vehicles, motorcycles, and we start doing some sensitization along with going to the villages to let them understand that they riding those motorcycles in Letem and they would have been involved in an accident, then they has no compensation because it doesn't register in Guyana. There is some consideration granted to them for using those motorcycles around Letem. So there's no way that we can arrest them for not using from using the motorcycles. Also, we would have enforced the driver's license, and most of them are not in custody of a driver's license. That is what we observe. But going out to the village, we learned that they're saying that the accessibility to get the driver's license is of concern, where they has to pay like over $6,000 to get the letter, and if they gotta come to buy the package, that's one day, and then four classes. So what we've been doing, we've been advising them once we have a core of persons, we are going to go to the villages and have the exams done. And when they've been successful, they were able to acquire their driver's license. So we're in process of doing that.
And you're seeing that it is having a good response.
Yes, it's been having a good response. Um, we have already visited two villages that I mentioned before, and we have already have 10 persons from that village signal their intention. So we will have the certifying officers going to that village and sell him the package, and then he's going to go and do the classes, and the exam is going to be done right there, rather than they have to come to let them to get this done. And that's one of the challenges with persons, to find finance to come to let them to get a license done.
Now, someone is asking, as you did mention that some consideration is given for the Brazilian registered motorcycles to be ridden around Letem. What happens if one of those persons decides that they would like to maybe come through the trail and come down to Georgetown?
No, they're not required to leave let them. There is
So once they leave Letem, that is
yeah,
considered
there's a
illegal.
cutout point how far they can go.
Okay. All right. That is pretty much fair. Now, evidently, with all vehicles, whether it's the motorcycles or the motor cars, all types of vehicles. The other thing, apart from being licensed, is that you've got to get certain documents for that vehicle. One of those is insurance.
Correct.
Could you say if there is the accessibility for that up there? Because it is obviously one of the things, if it is that a policeman stops a vehicle, it's one of those requirements that he looks for.
I can't say as yet. I didn't check to see if there's any company, but I know there's the other agencies there, GRA.
The state agencies that require
Yes,
you,
they're
that
there. All
offers those
these other state
documents, they're
agencies,
there.
but the insurance, I can't recall seeing any insurance company there.
I myself can't recall, but it would be interesting to know if it is that if they're not there, then they'll be getting there very soon to be able to help with, particularly the influx of those persons who are seeking to acquire uh, motor cycles and other types of motor vehicles. But whilst it is that traffic, you also, I believe, people not only use the motor vehicles, they use other forms of transportation too. And what is the legality or the allowing reasons for them to use such?
Like the pickup cars and so on. Well, Stan, I went to the region. I was briefed that they are giving a free zone to come to let him transact business and then go over back within a certain time. I think that is an understanding between the agency and let him or the government. I'm not too sure. But that was one of the briefing I would have received that they has the privilege to come over with their vehicle. Likewise, Guyanese has the privilege to go over with their vehicle.
Okay, so it's about building relationships.
Yes.
All right, awesome. And another thing, given the terrain of that area, you mentioned earlier that you've got places like, well, it's the big rivers, and people traverse that. Now, what about accidents that may occur on the waterways? How equipped are you with that? And if it is, since you've been there, have you had any situations where any accidents or so might have occurred in the waterways where the police would have had to be involved?
Yes, there were one accident where a boat was capsided, allegedly capsided, where someone had missing. There was that report, but yes, the police had to be involved in terms of carrying out search along the water, the river, and we would have had assistance from the region in terms of providing a boat to the region and the services in terms of other lights and all these other things. So we were working in collaboration with the other agency there, and we were able to carry out searches on the river. So all in all, other than we equipped with the relevant tools, the other agencies gave us assistance.
All right. If we were to come back to that particular situation that you did mention, it's interesting to note and or to just wrap our heads around it and get your advice. In terms of, because we've seen across the country sometimes a lot of these incidents that happens with the mishaps that happen in rivers or the waterways. Sometimes what is happening in most cases we've seen that it was an illegal crossing that was happening.
Correct.
Was that the same in this situation?
Yes, that was the same.
So it's a matter of people putting themselves in danger.
Correct.
All right. And how are you intending to tackle this to maybe make sure that this one remains as just one for the rest of this year?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we would have um, doing some patrols along the Takatu River in the St. Ignatius area, which is the poorest area and which is the area that it's alleged that they use to do the smuggling of persons and goods across to let in. And we would have also sensitized persons in terms of giving us information whenever they observe any illegal activity along the border there. They can call us, and we will treat their information as confidence with the strictest confidentiality and apprehend those persons. So far, we would have received information, but on arrival, the persons would have made good their escape. We didn't reach them. By the time we would have reached to the area, they would have left.
And I know when you say that, for the average coastlander, they're thinking, this will make you take so long. But give us a little graphic idea of distance. Let's just say, okay, you're
It's
talking.
it's about 2 miles. You have to drive in a terrain of forest. It's just a trail. It's not a smooth trail. Some parts there water, and you have to go round and round before you reach to those parts. So it would take the police some time to reach.
And when you say drive, it's not just jumping any kind of
No,
car
you
to
have to
drive.
have a high-end vehicle in terms of pickup or ATV.
So, so the terrain definitely is a challenge that you've got to work with.
Yes.
All right, all right. At least we've got that. What, Commander? What about issues of piracy? Any of that ever been happening in your region, or any reports?
No, there wasn't any report for the period.
No reports of that.
Piracy.
All right. Have you had any incidents where, given the lockdown that not just Guyana but the world is in, of persons maybe coming from neighboring countries, committing criminal acts, and then trying to flee or fleeing our borders?
There was no such report.
No such report.
No such report.
All right. Of which, of course, I would say kudos to you and team in making sure that that doesn't happen. And turning our attention now to the other issue that I wanted to raise with you today is if it is you can give us generally, you did mention in terms of serious crimes earlier that with the exception of one, which is sexual offenses, it's been down. You got figures that you could share in terms of maybe comparative analysis last year to now, uh, the same time last year as it is to
Yeah.
this year, what it is like.
Yeah, there's been an increase in simple larceny. Um, Last year, the same period, there were one simple larceny, and during this period, there are six reported cases of simple larceny. There is an increase in that area. Um, the other areas, like breaking into, there being a decrease in breaking into. 14 last year comparing to 6 this year,
Awesome.
same period. Um, we had robbery with violence. There has been a slight increase of two reported cases comparing with last year. Um, Murder, there hasn't been any murder for the year so far. The other serious offenses, they're very minimal.
Kudos on that. Whilst that would have happened, let's now talk about what the police has done. Now, with some of these cases, are the perpetrators at large or have they been arrested? Is prosecution in the process?
Yes, they are being arrested and prosecution in process in terms of the breaking into simple larceny and
Of all the cases?
all the
On
cases.
all the cases,
Yeah, persons being arrested.
persons have been arrested and
Yes.
they're going to be processed or have been processed for court.
Yes, they are being processed of court. Some of them are already before the court. They're waiting on the trial to complete.
Awesome. What about the willingness of victims in some of those serious crimes to actually put forward statements or make the reports and even follow up to witness to be witness or to give testimony in court?
Yes, we're getting the full cooperation from persons, especially the business community, with breaking into and simple larceny. They have been cooperating with the police fully.
Nice. One of the because I don't know if you have it happening in your region. One of the things that sometimes and one of your colleague commanders did mention that sometimes what happens, for example, there are people who will report an incident via telephone, but it is required that they be able to then, of some offense that is being committed or some infraction of a law that is being committed by someone. And when they're told that they have to make a report, then they don't want to. Or if it is that you decided you want to go ahead to prosecute, it requires to have that person as a witness, and they don't worry. And that obviously stymies the policeman's work. Do you find any situations like that where people might just want to report something verbally and they don't want to go through it what is required by law?
Okay, Stan. Yes, there is a few persons, but what I would have done, I would have, when I met with the Ripperoni Chamber of Commerce, I'd have told them about the police will be coming to them in a case of they having a report. They can call the station, make the report. We're going to be taking the statement at their house at their convenience, and then we would lodge the report in our records. and they agree with that, and they're working with us with that. So we're not getting this issue in terms of persons reluctant to make report via the telephone.
Great. This is the police in you. 21 hours 45 is the time. Commander, let's turn to your relations. You did mention, obviously, that you've got a pretty good relationship with the regional headquarters in terms of the what we would say the administration in the country, and you do a lot of collaboration with. Kudos in that. But however, what about outreaches or what about community engagements? What is happening in that area in your division?
Yeah, we have commenced engagement in terms of community outreaches, and this is ongoing. As I mentioned earlier, we started to go to the villages and to see what is some of their problems and try to address them. Um, so we've been doing community outreaches, and as I said, Stan, for the short time we're there, we have already touched two outskirt villages, and as soon as next week, we're gonna continue this enforcement, not enforcement, this community outreach, um, to listen from members of the villages and to address their concerns. We are trying to build trust of the police so persons can feel free to report incidents happening in their villages.
Nice. I know you talked about some of that, and ironically, we're in the anniversary month, celebrating 182 years of the Ghana Police Force as an organization. What are some of the plans that for your region you've got for the rest of this month?
Yes, we have some activities planned. We planned a church service on Friday. We also plan games evening. We also plan to give out hampers to the most elderly persons in a few villages. And we also plan to have a walkabout to share knowledge to the community about the police, what we're doing. So we intend to have that roll out before the ending of the month.
Before the end of this month.
Yes.
That's great. So a lot of activities that are happening along with the enforcement. Uh, the ranks under your command, how are they supporting you in this drive and initiative in terms of being able to build those relationship, the relationship that is necessary with the communities?
The ranks are very energized because when I would have took over, I would have had meetings with them and I would have outlined what some of my plan, and they were very impressed. I would have also put some systems in place that I felt that was much needed, and they're very much um, thankful. For instance, they are more comfortable because there was a lot of space, and some of them were in small areas, and I would have put them in these open spaces that they can work more comfortable, and they're very energized, so they're willing to go and they're accepting all the systems that I've put in place, and I would assure you we would have good service from the police in Letten.
You're having good service.
Yes.
Most persons, I don't know, I just want you to give me a little of the social aspect of Letem and by extension Region 9. Most persons tend to believe once you're on the coast, this is civilization. Anywhere you go is forested, or the term that they actually use is bush. You hear another thing like behind God back. But for those who've never traveled to that part of the country, what would you tell them that they could expect?
I would tell them to visit Letem. Firstly, Stan, it was my first time, and I'm very impressed with what I've seen in Letem. It's fast developed. In central Letem, there is all the facilities that you can think about: stores, business, and anything you want in Latin, you can go and get it. So I would advise them to visit Latin. It's not bush. It's a developed tongue. It's a tongue.
You have to be careful when you say anything you want, you could get in let them. Because there might be some people who might be coming there looking for other things that might be against the law.
Okay. Let's forget about that.
All right, given the vastness of that area, two other things I wanted us to be able to deal with quickly, Commander. But one is given the vastness of the area and the terrain, that being an agricultural spot too, that is the Rupununi, Letem area. Like some of the other areas, they've had to also battle with drug cultivation. Is this the same in your division?
Well, in the past, I would have heard that there were a few farms that they would have discovered. Um, but for the period I'm there, we haven't had any information of such is going on. I'm not saying that it may not be going on, but we doesn't have any information. But we hope that our intel would lead us sometime or the other if there is any farm there. And this mainly in the Mokomoko area where they do a lot of farming. I intend to visit there as soon as I get back to Letton to meet with the community to see what was some of their concern. And hoping that we get some information on these farms.
And of course, depending on the relationship that is
Yes.
built. What about trafficking in terms of, we did trafficking in persons, but trafficking now, obviously, not seeing any much of the cultivation. Would you see any of those passing? And particularly when with the checkpoints doing the checking, have you been able to discover any of that? I know Region 8 has been able to do that, Region 10, which borders your region. They've had some successes in containing some of the trafficking. What about in your region?
It's just, um, since I'm there, we haven't had any, but there is information that persons are trafficking. Excuse. Um, coming from Georgetown and leaving Letton. The anti-narcotics is working assiduously in terms of in these areas, and they are collaborating with us. So for the period, we haven't had any reports, but there are reports that yes, this is happening because as recent as early in the month, there was reports of a plane landing somewhere in Sand Creek area. But when we checked it out, it was false. There was no indication that any plane would have landed.
All right, and how far is, in terms of miles, how far is Sand Creek from headquarters in Latham?
It's very far. It's about 20 miles away from Letton.
And when you say 20 miles, it's not an easy ride for
It's
those
not
of
a
you
straight
average
road.
from Georgetown to Mary. It's no smooth road, it's lots of trails and so on.
Yes.
Pretty tough. Commander, what challenges, if any, are there given I know persons believe that because of the closeness to Brazil, that is Latam, uh, the bilingual or even multilingual populace that is there in terms of police being able to effectively police. Talking about people who may not speak English or may not speak it as a first language, and evidently you've got to do investigations, you've got to do inquiries, and you may meet up with persons who it's either Portuguese as their first language or and one of the local indigenous languages is their first language or sometimes only language. Are you being met with any of these challenges, and if so, how are you dealing with it?
Okay. As it relates to the Amerindian language, we has the Amerindian from the same tribe who speaks the language, so that is not an issue. But with the Portuguese, yes, sometimes there's challenges, and we have someone from the task force who give us the assurance that they're going to give us the assistance whenever we encounter these matters. And we haven't had any since, but I sure it would be a challenge. So we have already had some assurance from one of the member of the task force at our meeting that they would willingly cooperate with the police in terms of um, the language barriers.
Do you see a need for maybe training or the acquisition of those kinds of skills?
Yes, I think we need policemen um, who should be trained and acquire the Portuguese language so um, they can be a part of our team in terms of investigating persons who with the language barrier.
All right. It makes me, and I know we dealt with a number of this, but probably maybe finally, I just want to know. It is felt by a lot of persons that with the influx of a variety of persons from especially neighboring countries, what also comes is a lot of they consider illicit behavior. One such being prostitution. Would you say that there's been reason for you to consider this as happening in that region with the cross-border issues that are happening, and even with those who might be traveling all the way from Georgetown or Linden or other parts of the country, maybe to ply such a trade there?
Yes, there were reports that persons were prostituting. We would have attended to those reports, which proved false. Um, but in all indication, it does happen, but secretly in some areas in Region 9. For instance, Anna is a vast area, and it's more of a area where a person has to stop on their way coming to Letem, and it's a developed village. So there is report that that is going on in that village, but we haven't confirmed it. We are working on getting to know the location so that we can deal with that.
All right. And would you say that the police has a firm position
Yeah,
on?
our position is very firm on prostitution um, because with prostitution you have trafficking in persons, so we are very firm on that.
All right. Commander, it certainly has been a pleasure sitting and chatting with you tonight on this program. We'd like to extend an invitation to return again. And a little informally, I'd like for you to be able to. I know it's the anniversary month, so let's be able to do this. If it is that you'd like to say a very good night or good evening to the people in Letem and more particularly any of your ranks, feel free to do that before you leave.
Okay, I want to say good night to the admin team of Letem, um, more so the very hardworking mayor and the regional chairman, the REO, the town clerk. They're very hardworking people in keeping Letem safe. I want to say good night to you.
All right. And of course, good night to you to Commander Raphael Rose. Well, Superintendent Raphael Rose, the commander of Regional Division 9, spending some time on tonight's program. And I certainly hope that those of you who are listening, you're a little bit more edified and will perhaps want to be able to go visit Letem anytime. Commander, quickly, can you say, for the benefit of those, especially in the city, should they be visiting next time to Letem, how can they find a commander if it is that they'd like to meet with a commander?
Okay, the commander office is on the main access road when you leave the commercial area. I think you go south. The police station is right on the roadside there. You can come there and you see the commander.
All right. Easy to find you.
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, even if they don't remember this, just remember when you get there, ask, where's the Letten Police Station?
Yes.
Correct. That's the name, Letten Police Station, right?
Yes. It's an area where all the government businesses, the government buildings are, so it's not hard to find. The regional office, the magistrate court, and and all the other areas are close by.
Awesome. So once again, thanks very much for being here tonight.
Thank you, Stan.
All right, and of course, thanks to all those of you who have been in tune with us on tonight's edition of The Police and You. It's certainly been a pleasure, and do continue to follow the conversation on our Facebook page as well as our YouTube page. A big thank you to the technical crew here at NCN, as well as the corporate communications unit. Photographer, we've got Kareem Hussein, that's Corporal Kareem Hussein, as well as our video editor, none other than Lance Corporal Simeon Brown. I'm Stan Gouveia saying thanks for joining us and do have a good rest of your night.